My name is Dr. Daniel Martinez, I'm a child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist. This episode, what I'd like to talk about is what happened as I was becoming a psychiatrist and where did I end up. So, in my third year of residency, training at Loyola to become a psychiatrist under the support of Dr. Ray Robertson, I became deathly ill. I talked about this in my very first episode, where I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, which was then shortly reclassified to transverse myelitis. And then after many years, approximately 12 years of walking around with an unclear, vague diagnosis of vague origin with no real treatment, I was then reclassified to DVIX disease, Neuromyelitis Optica, at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. And then I continued at Loyola during that time. I was trying to finish up my adult psychiatry residency. It all happened at the same time, when I got sick and when I was needing to make decisions about where I was going to go. Keep in mind, I had just been married 1 year prior, and I had married an early childhood teacher who encouraged me about going into child psychiatry, which was a great move. I am forever thankful to my wife. But I was trying to figure out where I was going to do my fellowship, which is the training to become a child psychiatrist. I was intrigued with the idea of living with my wife. In fact, I was probably romanticizing living with my new wife in a new city, meeting new people, new adventures. And so we were considering many locations. I recall I interviewed at Harvard and Massachusetts General. I interviewed at UCLA. I interviewed at UC San Diego. And I loved all those interviews. But my wife and I really fell in love with the idea of me transferring my training and finishing at the University of California, San Francisco. And that was in the plan. But I got deathly ill right at that time. And I found myself as sick as can be and not moving my legs at all. And from the hospital bed, trying to decide, and my wife and I decided that it'd be risky to move away from the support of the family. And so we decided to stay here at home. But you can only imagine how hard that was for us trying to figure it all out, because I didn't really know if I was going to be able to walk again, how well I was going to be able to walk. And so staying at Lurie's Children's Memorial in Northwestern seemed to be the best decision. And so that's what we did. Those years in fellowship were very difficult, primarily because of my illness. I was still convalescing, trying to get better, limping around, tons and tons of medical problems. Maybe one day I'll show and share some of that. I will share, never show. But it was really tough. Let me give you a couple examples. I would end up with sepsis, infection in the blood, and needed to immediately be rushed to an emergency room and put on IV antibiotics. Those kinds of things were happening, and it was really tough. The infections, the pain, the abnormal movements, the twitching, very, very tough. Cramping that I had, tough days. But nonetheless, I just kept pushing along, hoping for a better day. And during my fellowship at Northwestern, I was assigned to a supervisor, and his name was Dr. William Bradbury, with whom I stay in touch to this day. What was interesting was that 1 year before finishing up my training and completing all my education, he said that I should really interview 30 spots if I was going to land the ideal first job. But then I scratched my head and I said, geez, how am I going to do that? 30 interviews. So I planned it one every other week for an entire year. And so that's what I did. I started looking around, daunting task, but working really hard and put myself out there. And I managed to check off 30 interviews. It was interesting that by the time I finished those interviews, the entire Chicagoland area knew me in terms of mental health, and I knew all the jobs that were available out there. I scoped around everywhere, and that was incredibly useful because I had the ability to consider public, private institutions, hospitals, big hospitals, small hospitals, inner city, suburbia. It was a wonderful recommendation that I got from my supervisor. And so that's how I ended up starting to figure out what I was going to do. Because I was so ill, it appeared that finding security, getting insurance, getting a pension, disability, all that kind of stuff would be important. But I was always thinking about what would be the best thing for me, what would be the best thing for my family, and how would I go about figuring out a way to have the most fulfilling career. I always thought about seeing patients, having a clinic, teaching students, and doing research. And so it always seemed to suggest that going to a major medical center would probably be the best. For those who've seen prior episodes of my podcast, you know that I am known as Ray's disciple. And so Ray Robertson in May of 2000 gave me a call. And he said to me, Daniel, I do not plan on living forever. I'm already 80 years old, and I would like to invite you to start your solo practice alongside my solo practice. We will have independent business corporations, but we will share overhead expenses and secretarial support. I loved him. I loved the way he worked. I loved the idea of being next to him on a daily basis, particularly early in my career. And so I was very inclined to say yes. And then he called me another time and he says, and on top of it all, I am going to give you 25 stable patients so that you can start meeting your business overhead from the get go. I recall being enthusiastic and saying, yes, sir, I'll do it with one condition. And I asked him to go out to lunch with me once a month for the time of the duration of our being together. And so we did. We went out to lunch once a month for 5 years. Yeah, beautiful time for me to start becoming a psychiatrist under the tutelage and the support of a great mentor. He then ended up in a nursing home at around 85 years of age. At that time, the lease was coming due, and I didn't feel financially stable enough to get a lease on my own. So he went to a nursing home, our office closed, and then I had to figure something else. That year was 2005, and that was a scary time because my life was evolving. I had patients already, but I didn't have enough to have a whole business. I didn't even know how to start that. But keep in mind that what I'm always going to propose is the idea of finding good mentors, somebody that can help guide you so that you can continue to move forward. And so that's what I did in life. And I ended up speaking with Dr. Piaca. Dr. Piaca was very helpful to me. He said, Dr. Martinez, why don't you go ahead and use my office in the evenings when I'm not there? So for a whole year, on Wednesdays, I recall, I would go into his office after everybody had left. I'd go into his closet, pull out 2 milk crates and full of my patient records, and then start seeing my patients. And I did that for a year. And it worked out fine. I also met another doctor, Dr. Vasiliki Tulios, to whom I will be forever grateful, who also opened the door to me and encouraged me to see patients out of her office. Starting a private practice is not easy. It's very difficult. And so I needed to also do other jobs to make ends meet because I didn't have enough patients to make a living in private practice. So I took 1099 jobs. And one day I'll talk about jobs and finding jobs and how does one go about doing that. 1099 contracts, W-2s, all business acumen that we all need, but we don't get much training while we're in school. I even have a manuscript that I hope I can one day publish and put out for everybody's use and education. So we did that. I recall, as now that I'm thinking about my 1099 contracts, I worked for a county job for 2 years. In that job, I was going to work a couple of times a week, seeing very destitute individuals, underinsured, uninsured individuals. And that was beautiful work. That was the time when 9/11 struck. The year was 2001. I recall those days vividly. I also did work in rural Illinois. I would drive about 130 miles once a week, and I did that for about 2 years too. And so I just did a number of different jobs. It was wonderful work, great exposure to it all during that time, which was very critical because there was a lot of issues with domestic terrorism, internal struggles, and trying to become a business owner at that time was difficult, but it was fine so long as I stayed connected with the people that were trying to support me and help me out. So I took on all those jobs and things continued to unfold. I added work to support my personal life. And then within 2 years, I started then getting offers. And so I became medical director of 2 community mental health agencies. And then really things started kicking off because then just so many opportunities to continue to grow as an individual. I've now been able to work with individuals of all ages, all walks of life, all socioeconomic strata, all different cultures, all different races, but really serving the needy, the underinsured is really my passion, has always been my passion. So as I started settling into all these jobs, it became very comfortable and I remained in those positions for many, many years as I continued to try to grow my private practice. In 2006, I was able to find a place, a commercial spot where I could treat individuals who had insurance. I decided to start bringing in individuals to be part of my group practice. I went from solo practice to group practice, and that continued to also work out. And life has been exhilarating. So many opportunities. That's my career, and so my career has really gone on. But life has been good, and I've had all these individuals. So now where am I at? I have had approximately 60 jobs or 60 contracts in all these years. I now have a staff of about 40, 42 individuals. It's been absolutely amazing. We've had so many opportunities. We've worked in jails, we've worked in hospitals, we've worked in nursing homes, we've worked in community mental health centers, we've gone to schools, we've gone to the suburbs, we work in the inner city, and people have been very supportive of all the work that we have done. The most important thing is really offering services with respect above everything. Then the second thought is the philosophy to use the least amount of medicine. And then third thing to keep in mind is the idea to be respectful and to not push medicine onto anybody. So I went to Goodwill and I bought sofas and lamps and stands. And then things just have continued to evolve to the place where we are right now. It's been really, really good. I look forward to continuing to support individuals and continue to help all of our staff to grow and to continue to move. And so this podcast really helps so that we can continue to expand our services to wherever we can, to whoever's going to figure out our mission. The next thing that I want to talk about is the idea of the importance of having a multicultural community, a multicultural society. It's now been 20 years and since I purchased that commercial condominium, and things have only gotten better over time, growing my private practice as I've kept all the other independent contractor jobs going. I've continued to do all of that, both private and public sector work. So right now we have had about 60 contracts in 25 years. I've done a lot of different kind of work in hospitals and in jails. I've established a good reputation. I've grown a business. I was born and raised in Chicago. Chicago has been my home. So I've developed many contacts. The business has kind of ballooned. It's gone great for many years now. We have been able to identify many friends and professionals in transition looking for different jobs. Our offices have staff about 40, 13 prescribers, 22 therapists, support staff, psychologists, social workers, counselors, nurse practitioners, physician assistants. It's been very good. I can't wait to share more about growing and becoming. If you like what you've heard today, please like, link, and subscribe. Before I leave, I want to end with this thought. All things are possible. We oftentimes talk ourselves out of things. We stay and make decisions that paralyze us because we don't listen to our inner voice that wants to encourage us, or we don't listen to people who are trying to motivate us. And so we end up paralyzing ourselves. Goodness awaits all of us, but the important thing is make sure that you seek help. Always find mentors. Don't be afraid. Dream. I want you to dream big. Thank you very much. I know that things are not easy at any point in our lives. And so the idea is just to jump in and to start taking any kind of adventure that seems to make sense to you and your life. I believe that one of the things that I've really been working on nowadays is reflecting a lot about my life as the days have gone by. Really, I'm thinking about how I need to go back and to perhaps even start writing. One of the things that I enjoyed the most in my life was the idea of journaling. And I would like to encourage and share a thought about journaling. I've told you that I've been in counseling for about 38 years. And so I've been journaling close to 38 years, more than 1,000 pages of written material as I was starting to go to medical school. And the book was by I believe, an art therapist in California. And Carpaccio was her name. And she talked about the idea of creative journaling rather than picking up a set of unlined blank paper and a set of colored pencils and start drawing and sketching whatever comes to mind. Now, we all are, in many ways, arrested in some respects. Imagine, when's the last time that you've tried to color or to draw? Most of us haven't really done much of that since about third grade. Because we haven't practiced that, we would say that we're arrested. I'm arrested as a basketball player. I am definitely arrested as a baseball player, even as a soccer player. I'm arrested even as a bicyclist. I don't ride my bicycle as much as I used to as when I was a kid. But can you imagine if somebody would have been continuing some of these activities for many, many years? You're going to get better. I want to get back to the idea of encouraging you to pick up a set of colored pencils and draw. I've loved all those activities because they've allowed me to reflect a lot of my life. And at this point, I'm thinking even about maybe putting together a book to show some of the work that I've done just as a conduit to encourage you guys to start reflecting on your life. My hope is that you guys can all continue to move forward, reach out through this podcast and send us a comment so that we can get more ideas for how do we continue to improve and bring to you the content that you're looking for. Thank you very much. If you liked what we did today, don't forget to give us a like, a link, and subscribe. And there's plenty of links down below. Thank you.